This is a podcast or something like that. I was just thinking about how I close my windows when I record, and that's obviously to not have traffic passing and, birds and, squirrels and stuff. But I did just think, I don't have central air in my apartment, so I do, in a sense, cut off my fresh oxygen flow, like specifically for recording the podcast, like specifically for like publishing my thoughts and ideas. And it's like, oh, that's great. Yeah, that's perfect. No, I definitely want to correlate decreasing oxygen flow, with like increasing publishing of myself. Anyways, hello, welcome to the Verbal Journal podcast. I'm What's Therapy. That is a YouTube channel I have. You may be familiar. That's probably the only way anyone would find this podcast. But speaking of that, I think I'm going to make this the first public episode of the Verbal Journal. Now, why is that? It's not going to be the best. I mean, I am really pumped for a lot of reasons that I'm about to tell you about, but I'm not trying to say it's better than the other ones. It will just be me. Some of the other ones have other people talking too. So, that's really cool. But it is going to be a really fucking good podcast. Let me tell you why. Okay. So first of all, welcome to the new people who are just checking this out, from YouTube or, wherever you've been, shared this link, probably from my community post that I post, to be like, hey, here's a public episode, check it out if you have nothing better to do. This is like the I got it wrong last week. Okay, last week I said 22, but it was 23, I believe. So this is episode 24 of the podcast. Our sort of running thing is that I'm not allowed to look at the episode number when I say that, so I believe it's 24. Super humiliating if I'm wrong on this one, but That's the risk you run, Gotta live on the edge. So anyways, the reason this is going to be a fucking awesome podcast episode is the last one, I was stressed as hell, okay? I only talked about it in the beginning. I moved on to other stuff, but so I had gotten this piano delivered, and I didn't ask for permission from my landlord, okay? You know what they say, it's better to ask for forgiveness than to ask for permission. Not always true, obviously. You can't just, not a blanket truth. But sometimes with landlords, you gotta be very nuanced. So here's the follow-up to that story. So I get a piano delivered, a baby grand piano, okay? So it's really nice. Even pianos much smaller are super nice, but this one has a relatively significant body to it. It's literally like... It's not like a full grand, but it's a baby grand, so it's got like a body to it. It looks like a grand piano. I didn't know how much it weighed. Okay, that was part of what I talked about. Anyways, so I talked on the last podcast. I'm not gonna say all the same stuff. I was stressed. I was like, can this building even hold it? I'm not on the first floor of the building. I'm like, I don't know. I didn't ask the landlord's permission. Maybe I should have. You know what I mean? I started having second thoughts. Like, oh shit, now I have this huge and it's like a family heirloom basically. So. My family just had nowhere to put it. That's why I got it. So I was like, oh, cool. Okay. So long story short, follow up to last week. So last week I recorded the podcast Sunday morning. Actually, it was it was evening. I'd already hung out with my friend earlier in the day, I think. Yeah. I was talking about it to everyone. I was getting everyone's take on what I should do. I was like, look, I know the piano's not going to actually fall through the floor, but what if it did cause some damage? I'm like, I don't know. I can't just have it be something. I can't be responsible for something I don't have the knowledge to take care of effectively. This is part of why I don't currently have a car, because I got so sick of maintaining a car when I don't know anything about cars, and I don't necessarily need to use a car for my day-to-day because my office is close to my home and I can just get stuff done. So I like minimizing my responsibilities unless those responsibilities lead to good things that I like. I take on some significant responsibilities other times. Being a therapist is a significant responsibility. I try to be there for friends. I try to do my best to meet my commitments and stuff like that. A lot of responsibilities are really good, but some of them you can just decide, okay, no, I actually don't want that responsibility. And a car currently is one of those for me. The piano I do want, but I realized I couldn't take the responsibility of keeping it a secret. So after the podcast, I not directly after the podcast, later in the evening, it was like 10:30, but it was an email. So I was like, whatever. I emailed someone who works for I emailed my landlord, but I emailed the representative, like someone at the office who I have a good rapport with. And so I was like, hey man, like I didn't say hey man, but I was basically like, I found a way to communicate that I had a piano and that I wanted their take on it without asking for permission. So I was basically like, hey, I just, I wanted to make according to my research, there's no issue if the floors are up to code. Here's how much. Oh, and I forget when I figured this out. Was I on the podcast? But I like figured out that the piano is probably like 620 pounds. And so I was like saying, okay, here's how much it weighs. Here's the square footage. And so anyways, I didn't hear back for fucking so long. So all this past week, it was July 4th week and the fucking landlord, like they don't work anyways. So like they're probably essentially, okay, that's not true. Landlords do work, but they also basically live off the expropriated labor of the tenants, which is just a ridiculous system. And no one is a fan of landlords except landlords themselves. But they do technically do work sometimes. So it's an exaggeration to say they don't do work. Anyways, I was like, who fucking knows? July 4th, they could be out all fucking week. I didn't hear from them until Friday morning. And then I finally did. He responds and was, very polite and was like, look, we don't really know the exact ability of the floors, but you're fine. And like, you're probably fine, basically. And if there was an issue, you could be responsible, but I know he just has to say that. But he said could, not would. So anyways, piano, but what's funny is I did regret emailing him. Like as a few days went by, I didn't regret it at first. And I never fully regretted it, but I did partially regret it. I was like, there's no issue with this piano. But I needed reassurance, and maybe it was definitely anxiety, but it was just really interesting experience because I had this significant anxiety about a relatively real threat that I just had somewhat irrational perspective on. But like at the end of the day, y'all, like it could not fall through the floor maybe, but still cause damage. So like, I don't think it's ethical to take responsibility for things that you don't have the ability to take responsibility for. So I was like, no, I'm discharging this responsibility. And I did not think my landlord would be able to force me to remove the piano. That was a key point. And I realized if I really truly believe that I'm right here, then let's just fucking go. Let's just get that fucking reassurance and let's just fucking go. And it was the biggest dub ever to get that response Friday morning. I've been on cloud 9 since then. So that's why this podcast is going to be dope. Last one was the stress podcast. This one is the release, the tension and release. I also have a ton of stuff to talk about. Oh, I just realized another benefit of making this one public. This is actually really funny. I didn't even plan this. So one of the topics we're going to cover today is recently revealed text messages between Jonah Hill and his ex that reveal an extremely toxic orientation that he has towards relationships, or had, I guess. I don't know where he's at right now. This was from like 2 years ago. And I think it's very revealing and leads to a lot of interesting topics. But anyways, I tweeted about it. I don't tweet a lot, but I do tweet sometimes on the tweet website. And it's interesting because I gave my take briefly, and then I said we'll be talking about this more on the pod tomorrow, not even realizing that I was then going to decide to make the pod public. The pub. Make the pod pub. Can we take that again? Yeah. Realize that I make the pod pub. Okay, perfect. Perf pod pub. Okay, anyways, speaking of tweets, follow up to last podcast, we were having a great conversation about surrealism in comedy. In fact, I think that made its way into the title of it. So we did have lots of great conversation, it's not conversation. It was just me talking into a mic, but, you just put it that way because it's sort of, But I did. So I was specifically talking about Chris Locke. So Chris Locke is a comedian from Canada, which is is the name of the area. I should say it's sort of to the north of the United States, or the so-called United States and so-called Canada, if you want to be technical. But anyways, Chris Locke, it just really blew my mind with this special that I talked about, with his 2023 birthday special that's on his YouTube channel. Definitely go check it out. It's not for everybody, I'm going to be honest. And you have to be, I should say it is for everybody actually, but you have to be in a certain mood. It's not for every mood. You have to be in a certain frame of mind. I feel like you just have to be like kind of open and getting what he's throwing down. And it can feel very weird if you're not. I do fully understand if people watch it and they're like, yeah, that's not my thing. But I loved it. And I kept going back to it. And just like it, as I talked about last week, it inspired me to write more short fiction. So I haven't made a YouTube video in 2 months. I published my Breaking Bad video 2 months ago. And I haven't, I've been working on some long-term stuff here and there. And at certain points doing a significant amount of work on some long-term stuff. But, that could be a video, and a long-term project that's going to be something else even more. But this sort of short fiction stuff is also something I've been dipping back into, which I did on breaks from the Better Call Saul videos. I've been more inspired to do some short fiction writing. I love the writer George Saunders, and I was reading months ago at this point, I was reading his book about writing short fiction. A swim in a pond in the rain is the name of it. It's where he analyzes these Russian short stories and these old Russian short stories, and talks about the art of writing a short story. And since he's like my favorite living writer, he's sort of like a modern Kafka in a way, in my opinion. And I'm sure other people have said stuff like that. But he's even more like well-adjusted. This is probably the best way to put it. So like he has like a family and stuff. Okay, so anyways, the follow-up with the Chris Locke stuff is I mentioned this on the podcast that I commented on his video, which I had commented like days before the podcast. I had commented on his video. And so I don't log into Twitter a lot, but I do log into Twitter more than I would like, but I don't look at people's tweets a lot. I just log in and see if there's anything going on, look at a few tweets, but I don't like actually follow. So I missed this, and he had actually posted on Twitter like a reaction to my positive comment on his fucking YouTube video. So I go to his Twitter specifically to be like, hey man, how can I support your work? Which I did, by the way, by going to his Patreon for his podcast, Evil Men, the Evil Men Pod. So I'm very pumped to check that out. But so I go to his Twitter and I see that he's shared my comment. So my comment, just to follow up, was I keep coming back to this over the last few days, and I need to say this is profoundly inspiring. Like, it's incredibly funny, of course, but unlike 99% of comedians, I feel like I'm reading surreal fiction or something. The doctor and naturopath story especially, but the entire thing, it's so surreal, it's amazing. It's genuinely the most inspiring writing I've experienced in quite a while. And then Chris Locke on Twitter said, my vid's over 1,000 views already in 3 days, and this comment just warmed the cockles of my heart in a very nice way. Thank you very much to whomever wrote it. Please watch and share my vid and experience joy and merriment. Wow, that's awesome. So it's really true. I can't stress this enough. So now and speaking of which, if you are a channel supporter, so that's good advertising, gotta say. Good job to the marketing team here at What's Therapy Corp. But if you are a channel supporter and you chill in the Discord, we have a very not super active Discord, but some good people, and we have some chats here and there. But if you are in the Discord, you can join. We're gonna do a little short fiction writing group, basically. So we have like our first prompt. We're gonna, in like a few weeks or something, we're gonna share some very short stories with each other, like a page or two or something, or whatever. And then we're going to, give our thoughts to each other. So kind of stimulate some writing. But I've been doing it on my own and really enjoying it and really writing. So yeah, just for some reason watching this comedian, like, not for some mysterious reason, he really brought to life what I love about writing. And a lot of it might have been improvised, but yeah, it really is. It really brought to life what I love about writing, which is that anything can happen, basically. One other thing I wanted to say in that vein is, and I think I've mentioned that I enjoy some of the funny YouTube commentary guys, and so on. And one thing I wanted to say is, like, I did talk about Drew Gooden on the Sad Boys podcast last week, and I talked about him sort of saying that, or maybe the week before, that like what they do, he didn't consider it art. And I said I thought he was overstating the matter, and I just wanted to follow up. I definitely think he was. Like, I get where he was going, but I thought he was overstating, especially like all of them for sure. But like even like Danny Gonzalez, I feel like, but really all of them, like, and it's really this style of comedy that is just a lot more popular. And if I like did some research, I could probably like talk about it in a more coherent way. But like, I'm sure people like write about this and stuff, but like they all do very surreal shit sometimes. Like, I just watched a recent like even more recent. Danny Gonzalez was on a podcast with, I think it was the same one, right? Yeah, it was the same one. It was on the Sad Boys podcast. And so, it's just this like random throwaway joke at the beginning where like they gaslight him that they're not even recording a podcast. And it's like stuff like that I have always loved, just like weird comedy that's like sort of stretches reality. Like in a way, there's types of comedy where you're like observing reality. Oh, wow, that's actually kind of a good way to put it. Yeah, like observational comedy, you're basically just like making interesting comments about society, not society, about whatever. But if there really is this other type of comedy where you're not necessarily observing, or you're really creating is probably the best way to say it. Yeah, it feels more creative in a way, even though it's obviously creative to write observational comedy, just like it's creative to write a video essay or something like that, even though I'm not creating a new fictional plot. So yeah, just surreal comedy, something I like. Okay, next up, we have a segment on this podcast where I read an interesting comment that I get on my YouTube videos. So I have a few. This is an extended segment this week. Okay, so if you like that part of the live streams where we would go through comments, you're going to love this segment. So good comment of the week. On the part 3 Better Call Saul, Kim and Jimmy video, someone said, on the Jimmy going to therapy thing, apart from the actual effect on the story, I think there's an interesting cultural thing going on there. Until recently, the last 10 years maybe, I can think of very few positive portrayals of therapy in media, especially in the 90s. I can think of so many portrayals where the therapist turns out to be evil or incompetent, or such a hot mess that they're a complete hypocrite. Within the universe of Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, the characters often hold stereotypical views towards therapy, but the show itself does not. Howard actually goes to a therapist and we see him do some healing. Of course, then Jimmy and Kim smash his life up in a whole new way, but he was clearly willing to do the actual work and it was really helping. I just thought that was interesting. If Better Call Saul had been written in 1998, Howard's willingness to see a, quote, shrink would likely have been used as a further confirmation of his douchiness. Instead, in 2019, it's portrayed as a sign of wisdom and humility. Just thought that was interesting. Very, very good comment. I fucking love that comment. I mean, I don't know that much about like the history of this stuff, and like that would be a great video one day. I don't know if anyone's done that, but like just a fucking deep dive of like therapists in media. I mean, I've never even really considered that for some reason. It seems so obvious, but like that would be a very interesting thing to do. Just comb the internet, try to find all of them, rank maybe a tier list. No. Yeah, so that's a really great point. I mean, yeah, the idea that the characters hold stereotypical views of therapy and the show doesn't is exactly the point I make in my part 4 video, where I talk about Chuck's, EHS, electromagnetic hypersensitivity, and the way his doctor interacts with him in season 1, and just the whole experience of that, and the way it's treated in the show. That was my point. Sort of like we can say Breaking Bad, demonstrates like themes of toxic masculinity, or, this or that. Like you could say like, oh, Better Call Saul demonstrates themes of like mind-body dualism in medical care, or like, Better Call Saul demonstrates, repressive, like sort of patterns towards mental health, or, like emotional self-care or something like that. But like you can say like, oh, these themes come up in the show, and that's the point of art and media and stuff. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about how I'm asphyxiating myself when I record things, which is an exaggeration, and I'm joking. When I'm recording the video's audio, like the audio for my videos, like when I'm doing the voiceover, that, if you've heard me talk about it before, that is like the most difficult part in the whole process for sure. And in that case, I'm even more like I'm under, a whole DIY booth with blankets, and I'm like, wow, I should get like an air quality machine. I'm actually going to get one of those. They sponsor all these chess tournaments, this one brand. It's probably good. I'll just buy it. No free cloud. I'm not going to mention the name. Anyways, another comment in this segment, another positive comment. Someone said, and then we get to the misunderstanding comment of the week. We got a good one this week. And then we got another historic one. So another positive comment. Someone said how they love how long the Lewis bit is. And I just wanted to share a little about that. So when I was writing the Lewis bit, so that came up if you actually were interested and like read the sort of notes I had that I shared for channel supporters. That one's just for the channel supporters, y'all. But yeah, if you did read my notes for Breaking Bad, you see like I'm just into Lewis. Like every time Lewis is on the screen, like immediately I'm like, listen, like not in the season 1 when he's at the like gas station, like before they recast him or whatever, but like it's the show just presents him in such a funny fucking light. So I was always like, Lewis, let's go. Like just Skylar and, Walter, the way they talk about him, like it was just so clear. Like Lewis had this such significant role being like the only friend any of them fucking have. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, is he the only one? Like, does Skylar have friends? I'm trying to think. Walter doesn't have any fucking friends. You would not say Jesse and Mike are his friends. No. That is a like mutually destructive hierarchical association of business. That's not a friendship. They were not hanging out and watching TV together, and they were not doing things for recreation. I don't know. Yeah, let me know. Let me know in the comments. So what else? Okay, next up. Sorry. What I wanted to say about the Lewis thing is so I'm working on it. I'm noting, oh, I love Lewis, blah blah blah. And then when I'm working on the script, I'm like, you know what? I think I just have to like go hard on this and find all the mentions of Lewis in the show. Like, if I'm going to do a Lewis segment, I feel like I should actually know every single time they mention Lewis. I feel like that kind of goes without saying. So, what did I do? Obviously, I found a website with all the scripts of the Breaking Bad episodes, and then Control F Lewis, and then found all the mentions of Lewis. And that was how I did that. I used the scripts of Better Call Saul videos that's on another website, I believe. I use that. It's very useful. Sometimes, like here and there, it's a few times a video, once a video. Sometimes you really benefit from that, being able to Control F. Like for instance, when I made the intro to the Part 3 Kim and Jimmy video, where it's what is love, baby, don't hurt me. Obviously that was hard to find, so I would like Control F baby like in a bunch of episodes in Better Call Saul to find someone saying it. Like sorry if that spoils it. I know I was supposed to do it mentally or something. Okay. So anyways, that's funny. Okay. Misunderstanding comment of the week. Someone said, okay, so this is it's kind of a classic. So this is on the Breaking Bad video. Was a pretty good video until you start. And this is my favorite type of thing because. Okay, I'll say after. Was a pretty good video until you started to lay down the Orwellian newspeak propaganda. How do you think people would react if you started saying stuff like, quote, toxic femininity or, quote, toxic blackness? Why do you think it's okay to vilify a group of people? This comment concludes. So that was obviously a very interesting comment. Oh, sorry, that was my phone just went off, reminding me to do the Verbal Journal podcast. Thanks. That's good. That's useful. I don't need that anymore at this point. It's been 24 episodes. Okay. And I always do it on Sundays. Okay, so yeah, the interesting thing about this, what I love about these people that I pissed off with this is they got pissed off 2 hours into my video. No less. It's exactly 2 hours, I believe, before I really discuss toxic masculinity or masculinity at all. I mean, I referenced that I will talk about it once or twice or something, but I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure I literally don't get into it. So I love the idea that people listen to me for 2 hours, not just to get the view or something. I love the idea that someone listened for that long and then and presumably liked it a lot. And I hope that makes them more amenable. I hope that means I planted the seed a little bit better. It doesn't seem like I did for this person. But so a few things to respond to this comment. First of all, George Orwell worked with the British government and gave them names of people he suspected were subversive. And as far as my understanding, his books should not be looked to for any sort of revolutionary potential. In fact, you should read history for that, and political economic theory. So I'm not a huge fan of Orwell, though I did enjoy 1984, and I'm sure he's a good writer. He's a good writer, but I don't think he has any credentials to. There's a reason that he's taught in every school in America. So he I guess controlled opposition is what I would conclude with in my perspective on Orwell. But that's just my opinion. I'm not informed. It's not the most informed opinion. I could read a book about his life and get better information on why I dislike him. Okay, so regarding their follow-up sentence. So toxic femininity, blah, blah, blah. I'm not even going to respond to toxic blackness. So the idea that first of all, the idea that these categories are being described as toxic in these phrases is just a complete misunderstanding of language. I say that, and I reference the video by Tim's video essays where he discusses that in extremely explicit detail. And I make it very clear. It's obviously not. How many times do you have to say to people? You know what I mean? People, it's literally not worth repeating. You could go fucking blue in the face. Oh, toxic masculinity is not calling masculinity toxic. And people will be like, well, it feels like it is. And it's like, well, it's fucking not. Learn what the phrase means. I don't know what to tell you. That's not how language works. Tim goes into way more detail about this. He's like, if we say, oh, I had rotten eggs, is that calling eggs rotten? It's like, no, things are modified by adjectives in different ways. So anyways, yeah, I mean, toxic masculinity, it's so obvious that there's ways that you can embrace your masculinity that can be unhealthy. I mean, so many people willfully misunderstand, but it's like, I'm so explicit that I think there are healthy ways to interpret masculinity. I say that multiple times in my video with specific examples from the show of Walter Jr. or Flynn, and then Hank, and yeah. But yeah, there's more examples that I left out, I'm sure. But yeah, there's so many ways you can embrace your identity, and it doesn't have to, of course it's not inherently toxic. I mean, masculinity is weaponized in more toxic ways than femininity because historically masculinity has dominated femininity in the political and economic sphere. So masculinity has wielded sort of profound power and wielded it unjustly when it's toxic. So, I mean, if I wanted to talk about, toxic femininity, as I think I talked about on the stream, I don't really know what that phrase refers to. I don't hear people talk about it a lot in a coherent, like, non-misogynist way. But like, because obviously we're not trying to call the second word the first word, right? But if you think toxic femininity, if you think femininity is expressed in toxic ways, you're allowed to talk about that. Just say what you mean. And like, yeah, of course there are ways people can embrace their identity of being feminine in ways that are unhealthy, of course. And as I speculate on stream, I would imagine in a sort of like analog to, or sort of like, in a balance with toxic masculinity, it's sort of like, instead of externalizing your emotions too much, internalizing your emotions too much. It would be what I would understand toxic femininity, instead of like being socialized to express violence when you're angry, being socialized to express sadness when you're angry, for example, or and all the socio-behavioral consequences and corollaries of that would be under a category of toxic femininity. And the idea that toxic blackness, I mean, that's just the idea that race is in the same category as gender here. It's a little bit hard to even wrap my mind around and know how to respond to that. But I don't have any thoughts about that. And then just a concluding sentence: why do you think it's okay to vilify a whole group of people? So I'm the only reason I'm talking about this, like, I honestly find it fascinating how people willfully misunderstand you. And as a YouTuber, you get so much insight into it. People just leave these comments where they will, like, there's no way. Like, it's just, it's really amazing how hard it is to communicate. It really like shines a light on language as an imperfect tool. Okay, so then I wanted to share, last comment is, like, just in terms of like amazing misunderstandings. Someone on my video, Better Call Saul, The Artist's Journey, I talk about the book Denial of Death by Ernest Becker, and I talk about it a lot, and I go on for many minutes about it, and but I do at one point criticize it, and I sort of say a few criticisms. I'm trying to remember. It was like basically the book is it feels excessively Freudian. It makes sort of like broad statements sometimes, and just it comes off as like not fully informed in certain ways, and just like could benefit from more peer review, or could have. So someone commented, your dismissal of Denial of Death right after explaining its premise of human self-importance is hilarious. Which is just, I read that and I'm like, did they comment that after hearing me talk about this book for like 5 to 10 minutes? Like, and did they read the book? I like, that blows my, like, if they read the book and still said that, oh wait, wait, I don't know which is crazier. Actually, if they read the book, then I hope they read the book. That's what it has to be, right? And then they're like, hey, I critiqued it too hard, right? But if they didn't read the book, that's the one that's crazy, because if they didn't read it and they still think my criticisms were too harsh when I still talked about it for so long. So like, I just thought that was so funny, because like, y'all, that book is worth criticizing. Like, I didn't want people to go run to the book and be like, oh, What's Therapy said this book is good. And there's one or two things that were actually like borderline really problematic. Like, I remember at one point in the book, so it's hugely inspired by a psychoanalyst named Otto Rank, who was like in the Freudian field, but kind of like doing his own thing, I guess. I never knew about him. This book is all about him. Apparently he had some cool ideas, but I don't know, because at one point, Ernest Becker cites Otto Rank talking about his work with a client, because he's a psychoanalyst or something. Okay? And he's talking about his work with a client, and this is literally, not verbatim, but this is what he says. A woman comes in with like some sort of stomach issue. Wait, what was it? It was like she had some sort of stomach issue, and then she also, in her life was like, maybe like single and like didn't have kids or something, and like maybe was at a not great place in Otto Rank's opinion or something. And like, I might have some of the details wrong, but what Otto Rank writes about saying to her, which by the way, I would never, I don't know. Did he get her permission to write about this in a book? He better have, but I doubt it. But he said, he said, oh, what I told her is that maybe we actually shouldn't try to break down what's going on in her life to try to resolve the stomach problem, because maybe trying to break down what's going on in her life would cause her more distress, and maybe she should actually just deal with the stomach problem and not try to break down the mental health like corollaries of the stress. And it's like he thought, and you might be thinking that's fucking absurd for a psychotherapist, psychoanalyst to say, and yes, it is. But what's worse is he thought that it was his right to be like, you know what, and it is it's a professional judgment. It's just such a bad professional judgment to make the judgment that a client should just deal with some sort of manifestation of their stress because you think they can't fucking handle delving into their stress is the most fucking timely for that period, and unfortunately a lot of periods. And it does come back to misogyny and patriarchy and like infantilization of women and like believing that, which goes along with the fact that women didn't have fucking property rights until I don't even know when. Looking at legal stuff is only the tip of the fucking iceberg, obviously. But anyways, so like the sort of relational and even in this case professional corollaries of that sort of like historical reality are someone like Otto Rank looking at a woman patient and being like, hey, actually maybe I should deny you my care because maybe you can't handle analyzing and breaking down your life. Okay, so next up I wanted to talk about something very serious but really fascinating that I just learned about, and I just want to mention it. We're not going to talk about it for too long, but so I just learned about Seneca Village, which was a settlement of mostly black landowners in the borough of Manhattan in New York. So basically in Manhattan, in New York, like where current Central Park is, there was a village of mostly black landowners in the 19th century. So Seneca Village, and this is from the Wikipedia, okay? So it's just, I don't know, I can't verify all this, but this is on Wikipedia, so it seems true. And this blows my mind. So check this fucking shit out, okay? 19th century. So Seneca Village was founded in 1825 by free black Americans. The first such community in the city, although under Dutch rule of the city, there was a half-free community of African-owned farms north of New Amsterdam. Okay, interesting. But this was the first community of free black Americans in New York. At its peak, the community had approximately 225 residents, 3 churches, 2 schools, and 3 cemeteries. That's a fucking whole-ass community, okay? The settlement was later also inhabited by Irish and German immigrants. Seneca Village existed until 1857 when, through eminent domain, the villagers, and I'll say what that is if you're not American and you're like, what the fuck? The villagers, and I don't know if they call it that in other countries. The villagers and other settlers in the area were forced to leave and their houses were torn down for the construction of Central Park. The entirety of the village was dispersed. The entirety of the village of 225 people, 3 churches, 2 schools, and 3 cemeteries was completely obliterated by the U.S. government so that Central Park could be built. And oh wow, that's so interesting that it just happened to be on the free black Americans community. The free black landowning Americans community, the people who were actually improving their situation for themselves and doing very well. And living the dream of America and every country of just like having a comfortable, nice life after, just recently having been having their families having forced to be slaves in the same country. But you can't have fucking rights in the United States. You can't have the rights in any country. Like the government can, like our rights are really granted at will, and we don't even know them most of the times. But it really so I learned about this recently. Oh my gosh, this opens up a whole nother thing we won't go into. The Young Turks contributor who has begun making a name for herself by making transphobic comments and going down this path that people do when they're at an interesting point in their career. She sort of attacked a specific person on YouTube. I forget her. It's Ole something. Sorry, I don't watch her channel a ton, so I have to find it. But anyways, I was watching this person basically talk about the experience of this Young Turks contributor, denigrating them publicly for criticizing the Young Turks contributors' comments. And basically like this huge escalation that had happened. And in part of doing that, just part of the conversation, I honestly can't even remember what part of the conversation, I'm just trying to pull it up because I feel so bad. I'm so bad with names sometimes when I just... Oh, okay. Yeah, her name is Ole, and her channel is Olurinati. So it's Olurinatti, and really dope. I just haven't seen enough of her stuff, but it's awesome. Yeah. Olemi Olerin. So yeah, a movement lawyer and political commentator. Damn, yeah. So yeah, it was really cool. I was so glad she mentioned Seneca Village because I definitely I had never heard of that. That's not the type of thing they just teach you in school in the U.S. Man, I just took a second to try to find her pronouns. I can't find them on her Twitter or YouTube. It's actually kind of annoying sometimes. Because you're trying to refer to someone, I guess. Yeah. Okay. I mean, at the end of the day, if they don't have their pronouns listed, I guess you just assume and then apologize if you're wrong. Okay. So Seneca Village, interesting, eminent domain. Government can do whatever it wants, whenever it wants, and you have to prepare for that. And several vestiges of Seneca Village's existence have been found over the years, including 2 graves and a burial plot. The settlement was largely forgotten until the publication of Roy Rosenzweig and Elizabeth Blackmar's book, The Park and the People, A History of Central Park in 1992. After a 1997 New York Historical Society exhibition, the Seneca Village Project was formed in 1998 to raise awareness of the village, and several archaeological digs have been conducted. In 2001, a historical sign was unveiled commemorating the site where Seneca Village once stood. In 2019, the Central Park Conservancy installed a temporary exhibit of signage in the park, marking the sites of the village's churches, some houses, gardens, and natural features. Yeah, that should not be temporary, Central Park. Yeah, that goes without saying. And the descendants of those people should be compensated. That goes without saying. It's so obvious. I mean, I believe in full reparations. I don't know the details. Don't ask me to work out all the details. But I believe there's got to be a way to give reparations to people. I mean, the Jews, I'm Jewish. We got reparations, right? In Germany, didn't Jews get reparations? Is that wrong? Germany reparations. I'm quite sure. And, why the fuck shouldn't reparations exist? Poland demands 1.3 trillion in World War II reparations from Germany. So the idea of a state demanding it is a little tricky for me. I think I'm sure they have a good reason, but maybe there's some way to make sure that goes to the people. World War II reparations, that's a thing. Yeah, I didn't make that up, but it was to the governments. I should read a book about this. Interesting. So I don't know. I thought Jews got reparations. Okay, let me type in Germany Jews reparations. I didn't get a cut of it. Germany has been making. Okay, wait. That's just the. So I used the browser Brave, and it does that sort of AI summarizer thing. Should I go to the actual website? Okay, no, I'll just go to a different apnews.com. Germany marks 70 years of compensating Holocaust survivors. Okay, great. And they agreed to pay approximately... The organization that handles claims on behalf of Jews who suffered under the Nazis said Thursday that Germany agreed to pay approximately 1.2 billion, and this is in September 2022, last year, to Holocaust survivors, 1.2 billion around the world in 2023. Wow, around the world. That's cool. I actually didn't expect that. I really didn't expect that. I figured a government wouldn't do that. They can pay people around the world. Wow. Bringing its total compensation to more than 80 billion euros. Wow. Okay, cool. Yeah, I mean, it seems pretty obvious. Obviously, when you do something wrong, you have to make amends, and reparations can be part of that. So it's the most obvious thing ever. People who are against reparations, it's like, okay, so what do you think nothing was done wrong, or do you think nothing needs to be done to correct wrongs? Like, in what way are you fucking, like, completely missing the point? Okay, longtime listeners of the podcast will know that I got a what's it called? The screen, a pop filter screen for my mic that immediately fell apart. It's just a piece of junk. I guess you have to pay more than like $15. And now it's falling, but like I've been like connecting it to my mic stand with like a rubber band to keep it in place, because it just like it broke. The whole axis just broke. But now it's breaking in new ways, and I actually need to stop using it. Like the part that connects and holds on to the mic stand is now like which you need. The rubber band is just to sort of make it not fall off in a different dimension. But now it's breaking in new ways. Like, so I'm gonna take it I have to take it off for a second. Okay, so it's like invented new ways to break. It's kind of amazing if you really think about it. So no more pop filter. I'll try to not say the letter P or B or anything like that. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about Jonah Hill misogyny. So very interesting to learn about these private text messages of Jonah Hill. Why? Why do I care? Who fucking cares? I don't know Jonah Hill. You don't know Jonah Hill? Well, obviously it's not about Jonah Hill. We're not here to talk about Jonah Hill particularly. Rather, the themes that Jonah Hill's behaviors have raised. And obviously, I don't care about Jonah Hill's private life. I'm not concerned with him personally. That's never the point usually with celebrity stuff. But so, and I'm not going to, I don't know. This is not like the place to learn about the whole thing. But, I'm not going to read the text to you or anything like that. Maybe some of it might be referenced. But anyways, basically it came out. So Sarah Brady is Jonah Hill's ex, and she posted, I believe it's just within the last few days, might have been yesterday, on some social media platform, sharing the text he sent to her basically around the end of the year 2021. Just a quick response to the, all my viewers and listeners, are at least slightly more critically thinking than this. But just to respond, and I didn't mean that to be insult. I meant that as a compliment, but it sounded insulting. But yeah, no, I feel like people who enjoy my stuff like would not think along these lines. But to the sort of like dumbest form of denial where people are like, oh, this is old. Why do we care? I took down the, hey, this is a celebrity. Why do we care? So this is 2 years old. Why do we care? It's just an absurd, ridiculous comment. Do you stop caring about things when it like, why? Because we're not talking about this because Jonah Hill is a danger. We're talking about this because men are doing this every day. Okay, and partners are doing this every day, but it's heavily gendered, these forms of control that we'll talk about. Anyways, Sarah Brady shared, so she is a surfer, and apparently from these texts, from these posts, it seems that Jonah Hill and her actually met via Instagram or whatever social media platform she was on, posting pictures of herself surfing. And then the reason this is being talked about right now is because I guess through the process of their relationship, they did end up dating, and then they had this relationship. And then these messages are being shared publicly now because in the course of their relationship, Jonah Hill started hating that she was posting pictures or even had posted pictures where she was basically revealing any parts of her body. There were a lot of things actually that he didn't like about what she was doing and how she was acting. And so these messages that she has now shared reveal his way of going about trying to influence her. And it's remarkable to see people's different responses on this, because obviously there's the very cookie cutter. There's many men who anything they hear about a man controlling a woman, they're excited about that, and that makes them happy because for lots of reasons. But there are a lot of men who don't see women as equals. There are women who don't see women as equals. Of course, there's internalized ideologies for all, many different types of people. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's something where, many people are going to respond to this obviously in their like cookie cutter way of not critically thinking of, oh, okay, cool, whatever bias I had. I mentioned on the last podcast that, I took some days off from work. I was working on some writing and some other stuff, is the project I sort of mentioned earlier on this podcast. But it, just in relation to my work as a therapist and a lot of my overthinking about life and relationships and stuff, I'm working on just trying to break down some of my ideas about how relationships work and how we want them to work. So I wanted to talk about this because the way Jonah Hill went about communicating to his partner what he wanted from her, what he wanted her to do, really brings to light the way therapy speak can be manipulated in a very short way of putting it. What I focus on in my thinking and writing is how we can obviously use our communication to better communicate our needs and our wants, and then what to do when those are in conflict with other people's and how to go about that. And it's very clear from anybody reading his messages that he has gone to a therapist. And so some people are having the take of like, well, it's, clear therapy doesn't work. And, again, people are going to have their biases reinforced. That is always going to happen. But it's very clear that like he uses the word boundary many times. I mean, just many times. He uses words like inappropriate, unstable, respectful. Like I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, I lied. I am going to read his text. He says, so this is the first one I saw. This one has this tweet has 25 million views, according to Twitter. Who knows how they calculate that? It has 68.8 thousand likes and 4,428 comments and 15.7 thousand retweets. Just this first tweet of this person sharing Sarah Brady's Instagram post, Instagram message, or like text message of Jonah Hill saying, plain and simple, if you need surfing with men, boundaryless inappropriate friendships with men, to model, to post pictures of yourself in a bathing suit, to post sexual pictures, friendships with women who are in unstable places, and from your wild recent past beyond getting a lunch or coffee or something respectful, I am not the right partner for you. If these things bring you to a place of happiness, I support it, and there will be no hard feelings. These are my boundaries for romantic partnership. My boundaries with you based on the ways these actions have hurt our trust. So there's one line in that is most important, which is, I am not the right partner for you. But what's fascinating is like, he's framing it as communicating his needs. But I'm sorry, that is not, you don't get to have a need that your partner doesn't surf with men. That's not a need. That doesn't fall into the need. Or I guess what I'm trying to say is like, if that's important to you, you have to recognize how kind of like unusual that is. You have to have some self-awareness and say, instead of framing it as like, hey, meet my reasonable standards, you need to frame it as, hey, I know I have unreasonable standards. if you don't want to be with me, fair enough. I have these very controlling ways that I want to go about relationships. It's a huge problem for me, but I'm looking for someone to accommodate that problem rather than challenge that problem. And but he clearly does not have self-awareness. It's clearly he's very in a heightened sort of escalated emotional state in some of these messages. You get the sense he's like not being rational. That's not obviously in any way a justification of his behavior, but I'm just trying to understand, like, people often communicate less rationally when they're I don't know when they're so okay, what I'm trying to say is, like, okay, you feel hurt, Jonah Hill, right? Or whoever, we can all feel hurt by our partner doing something. Okay, you feel insecure. Your partner has, what's like the most, out of all, he listed so many things. And if I had to pick one that is reasonable, the only one that's reasonable is boundaryless, inappropriate friendships with men. But it's because he says they're boundaryless and inappropriate. Telling her she can't model is fucking absurd for so many reasons. It's like, I mean, it's fucking absurd, dude. Like, I don't even, like, you can't tell your partner they can't model. I don't even know what to say. Like, if it makes you insecure that your partner models, regardless of ignoring the fact of, like, you met her and she was probably already model or something, are you fucking kidding me? Are you going to try to change that about your partner? But, like, forgetting that part, like, I don't even know if it's, like, if you're so insecure that you can't date a model, then, like, what am I trying to say? It's like, I'm trying to think of, like, an analogy. Like, it's like if I was like, oh, I can't date, like, someone who works on a ship because they're away for, like, months at a time. It's like, okay, my partner's job will create conditions in the relationship that I am not okay with. The only problem with what Jonah Hill's saying is, like, I guarantee you he doesn't have a problem with her modeling because she's too busy or something, right? He has a problem with her being visible to others. And the reason that's significant is because when you isolate it as that, he has a problem with how her behavior makes him feel, but not because of how her behavior affects the relationship. And so he's centering his own feelings in the relationship and making her adapt to his feelings when her behavior is not affecting the relationship in any other way than making him feel a certain way for a reason that most people would consider unjustified or, like, not fair. And the reason, I know that's like a lot of words. I know that's uncertain. Who am I to say what's reasonable and so on? That's an important question. But the thing is, like, yeah, I mean, like, people have to compromise. So you have to choose what's most reasonable to compromise to. So these are ideas I'm going to be developing in a lot more detail, and one day we'll share with the world when I figure out a way to say it that is less weird, but hopefully it's fun to talk about. Anyway, so the idea that you're going to tell your partner they can't have friendships with people in, quote, unstable places and from your, quote, wild recent past, this fucking screams you just don't love this person. You think they have a wild recent past that they can't be friends with these people? Look, if this person's in recovery and they're hanging out with people who are in active addiction and you don't want them to do that, then you say, hey, I think what you're doing is unsafe and it's making me want to leave the relationship because it's hard for me to watch. And then hear what they have to say. Like, he could have said to you, like, instead of, if these things bring you to a place of happiness, I support it and there will be no hard feelings. Like, why don't you just say, hey, are these things needs for you? Which he already fucking knows they are. He already knows they are. I guarantee you he already knows she fucking wants to keep surfing with men, wants to post pictures of herself in a bathing suit is one of the points, posting pictures of herself in a bathing suit. I saw a really funny tweet. Jonah Hill has gone so far with body positivity that he thinks only he can be the one to show his body. It's not funny to joke about. So this is really a problem because men actually think they're justified. I mean, I'm a man, but I don't think this way, so I'm not including myself in the category. Some men actually think they're justified to to control their partner's behavior to this extent, that they think it's gonna, like, he's not the right partner for her, and he just, for some reason, can't just, like, accept that. It's such a different, like, it's not an if-then statement, you know what I mean? Like, he's framing it, he says if multiple times. It's if you need blank, blah, 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 then I'm not the right person for you. If these things we have, then this. It's an if-then statement, right? So it's logic. But the problem with the if-then statement is, like, he already knows that the if is the case. It's absurd to consider that the if would not be the case. The fact that he could consider a world where she stops modeling, posting pictures of herself in a bathing suit, being friends with people in her, multiple people in her life that he views as unstable, surfing with men and having relationships with men that he considers inappropriate. The fact that he can fucking conceive a world where she changes all those things for him is disgusting and represents a completely unequal orientation towards relationships. Go find a fucking slave. You know what I mean? If that's how you want to, and which don't do that actually, because that's illegal and wrong. But you know what I mean? Like, why are you pretending like you want to have some equal relationship? You don't. You want them to kowtow to all your desires is a key word, not needs. Desires, in my opinion. Okay. So that's my take on that. And you can read more of the messages. They're really disturbing. They're really not fun to read, but I did want to talk about it. Okay, few more segments on the podcast, and then we will get the heck out of here. But yeah, just a few more segments. I know we love those. So okay, first one, fantasy baseball update. So I'm in a fantasy baseball league. I'm doing bad, but I'm like, I got a good team, but you know, things just don't go your way sometimes. I'm playing like one of the best teams in the league. If you don't know how fantasy sports work, in baseball, basically you get a week. You're playing against one person, all your players against their players. You get points when your players do well and lose points when they do bad, and so on. And at the end of the week, whoever has the most points, you win the matchup. So Sunday's the last day of the week, so it's always exciting to let you all know, and people are so into it. So I'm doing a little bad. I'm behind by like 30 or 40 points. I had a great day yesterday, though. Yesterday, I gained some ground because their pitchers actually were kind of bad. Their pitchers kind of fucked up, and my pitcher did great. Blake Snell had a great game. So it's really good. I actually am now within striking range. I was kind of giving up. So I added 2 more pitchers to my lineup, which meant getting rid of 2 pitchers, but it was fine. I had 2 I was fine getting rid of. Now I have 4 pitchers throwing today, including Max Scherzer for the Mets and Domingo German, who just threw a fucking perfect game. He threw the first perfect game in like 11 or 12 or 13 years or something. Like recently. That was, I think, his last outing, potentially. Threw a fucking perfect game. That means no one got a hit. He threw all 9 innings. No one got a hit. And no one fucking walked. He didn't throw 4 balls to any batter. He threw a fucking perfect game. And the reason no one's gotten one in many years is because, I mean, it's obviously hard and rare, but people throw no-hitters and stuff. But, like, you know, getting no walks and throwing a complete game. But, like, it's also just, I mean, yeah, nowadays, like, I don't know, whatever. Anyways, so, yeah, he could do really well. And then I picked up 2 other pitchers. So I'll let you know how that goes. Okay, that's that segment. Next segment, the chess minute. Well, I don't really have too much to say, but there's a new tournament going on. Or it's actually, might have finished today, actually. I didn't follow it a ton. It was Rapid and Blitz. It was all the top people, including Magnus and all the top people. Yeah, it did finish today. But it was, I mean, I saw some cool games, I think. Yeah, there was like Ali Reza, Fabiano. There were some good games. I guess I don't really have much chess update today. I'll talk more about chess next week. I'm sure there will be plenty to say. But yeah, I don't follow a ton of Rapid and Blitz. I like Rapid. If I'm free, I can watch it. Each person gets 25 minutes. The games are really good length. I like that enough to think about it. But Blitz games, 5 minutes each, I can't watch. I mean, you have to just fully be watching. It's like a live, you really have to fully be watching. So it's just a lot. Next segment, my screen time report. So I share my screen time report for my phone, not my computer. That one's private. This week, I spent 14 minutes less per day than last week. So 37 minutes a day on average on my phone. YouTube was a bunch because I did watch a video or two on YouTube. Sometimes I'll play it on my phone, not even look at it. I just have it on the side. It's just convenient sometimes. And then the Messages app. I was sending a lot of texts this week. Wow, an hour and a half of the Messages app this week. Wow. I've been social. I have been more social. I've been doing more stuff. I've been seeing more friends. I've been chilling more, dancing more, and living it up. So that's been great. And last segment of the pod is the mailbag. So verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.com. I make sure to not mention it until like 6 hours into the podcast so that nobody ever writes in. And nobody wrote in. And so the podcast is done. Thank you so much for listening to this extremely long but very first public episode of the Verbal Journal Pod. It's a fantastic occasion. Please tell your friends, your enemies, your neutral acquaintances, tell strangers about this episode if you want to. It's not a big deal. And if you want to hear the previous 23 episodes, assuming I have the number correct for this episode, just join the Patreon for like $1 or whatever, or more if you're like super rich or something, or become a YouTube member. And I post them for both. So I post them for both patrons and YouTube members, and you can listen to all the other episodes. I mean, hey, I basically started the podcast because I was like, look, I like the idea of it. I like the routine of it. I like the sort of archive value of it. Just like really, you get, like, if you go back and listen, you get to hear me like work on the Breaking Bad video from complete conception to conclusion. And that's just the beginning, So, the piano saga. People are going to be talking about the piano saga. They're going to be like, remember when he fucking thought his piano was going to fall through the floor? Or like fucking 6 weeks from now. Hey, so yeah, I had to move apartments. My piano fell through the floor. So, okay. So, all kinds of benefits of a podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a great time the rest of your day, night, or whatever. And I will catch you next week to continue this thing. Bye.
This is a podcast.